Hey, Unguarded fam. Welcome back to part 2 with our conversation with Alli Webb. We're going to pick up the conversation when we left off. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and let us know in the comments what you think.
A couple years ago, one of my dogs died, and it was excruciating and it was heartbreaking. And I, it's funny because this isn't funny. When I see people who've lost their dog and like post about it, because a lot of people post about it online, it's like that will take me down.
Sure.
Like I read a post about someone losing their dog, I am a puddle. You know, and the reason I bring it up is because I've met a lot of people who kind of harden around, like, I'll never get a dog around. Even my father, like we had a dog growing up that he was just in love with and was destroyed when that dog died. And I was like, get a new dog. And he was like, no. And I meet so many people who are like, I'm not getting a dog. I'll never get a dog. And I've thought about that. I'm like, because if you get a dog, the dog you're hopefully going to outlive that dog. And you know that pain's coming.
Totally.
It's coming.
Yeah.
There's no stopping that pain. It's coming, and I have this little dog that I'm obsessed with now, and he's like my boyfriend basically. And I'm like, if like Dusty's not around, like it will be devastating to me.
Yeah.
But yet, a few months after Cooper, my last dog died, I was like, I gotta go get a dog because I love the love of a dog. I love the unconditional love. I love dogs. I'm such an animal person. I've always had dogs. And I think it's like it is a similar parallel. It's like, just because I've had my heart broken and love hasn't worked out for me, it's like, it doesn't, like, love is all there is at the end of the day. Like, how could you give up on love? So I guess that's like the best way I can answer that is I think that's where my resiliency comes from, because I've been lucky enough to be in love, and I know the feeling, and I know it's something money can't buy. It's the best feeling that there is. And I'm like, I'm going to keep looking for it. I'm not going to give up on it.
It's good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
I love what you said. Like, it's you're not going to give up on it just because it's hard or it's hurt you. But, the greatest risk to love someone else is that, it could hurt you in the future. But I think it's worth love,
the pain that could come.
I mean, I feel like it could be similar to being a parent as well. That
that's where I was going to take it next too.
You guys must be married.
I know.
Synergy didn't even have to communicate with words.
I'm so proud of myself, really, because
we did it together.
We did.
It is true. I mean, it is. Yeah. I was just reading something about that. And I have, I don't know if you guys have, hopefully you haven't experienced this, but I have a dear friend who lost a son a couple years ago. And it's just, I think it's like the more empathic you are, I guess. I mean, for me, I took it on really heavily, and it's you just don't know what to do, and it's like there's no words, and it's just the most. And I know you guys have gotten close to that with. I mean, it was Rocky, right? He was in the hospital, and so what that pain feels like.
Sure.
There's nothing like it. But it's like it's a risk. I mean, every time my son leaves the house in his car, there is a little bit of a drop in my stomach. Like, God keep him safe. It's rough. But it is like, do you want to deprive yourself of that love and the relationship, or for what could happen? And stakes are high.
They really are. But I don't know where you were going to take it, or
you can say
we love your boys. Yes. They are phenomenal human beings, and
I like them.
And that's the thing,
and I love the way they love you.
Yes.
Yeah. They're mama's boys.
They're the sweetest. Like, I've seen text messages and I'm like, oh my gosh, he texts me that. Like, I can't wait until our kid, gets old enough that they can have phones just for the text messages,
Yeah, except that most of the time they don't text you back, and you're like, where are they? I mean, my kids are okay with this, but I track my kids, and they track me. Like, they have a tracker on my phone too. Yeah. So they're like, Mom, why are you on that side of town?
I love that.
Yeah. It is really, it's like, it's the most beautiful love. It's really special, and it is fun. I think the older they get, the more fun it gets. Like, because they're just become like their own people. Like, I was at a dinner last night, and my kids were with their dad, and Grant came home, and he sent me a text message, and he's like, where the freak is my mom? And I was like, he was just like, I'm home. I want my mom to be home.
Yeah.
And it's like, sweet,
It is sweet.
Yeah. No, we love the relationship that you guys have, and for us, it's aspirational. Like, our kids are younger, but we want to be like best friends with our kids when they're older, and to not just, we're our mom and dad and we're parents, but we also want to make sure we do life together. And are there some things that you did, intentionally with your boys, that maybe seeds you planted that has been able to see the fruit of now you guys having a really incredible relationship?
Well, not in the beginning of like, as you're navigating, as you guys know, you're just like trying to keep your head above water, right? Especially with how many children you have. But even just having two, it's just like, it is the whack-a-mole, right? It's like you're kind of like always like, making sure everybody's fed and healthy and clothed and, just like the basics at the beginning. And then as they start to get older, like, again, the stakes rise and you're like, this is more emotional now than physical. And for me, Grant going through rehab when he was 13, which is young, and I talk about it in my book and whatever, and he's doing great now. But there was so much learning for me in that period of like how to connect with my kids better. And I will say this, and I'm very proud of it, is that even both of my boys, especially my younger son, will tell me, all my friends lie to their parents. They just don't tell them a lot of things because they can't. Yeah. Because so many parents, in my experience, just through my kids, they don't tell their parents things because of the way they react, and they freak out, and there's this like, which is also like crazy to me, because I'm like, you were a kid once, you did this shit once, like, why do you think your kid isn't going to do it? Right. And so for me, I mean, my son will tell me things and be like, even like literally as I was walking out the door today, my younger son told me something. He's like, don't tell Dad, don't tell Grant. His dad will never listen to this, I don't think. And he was like, and he told me this thing, and I was like, why don't you want to tell them? He's like, because they'll make a big deal out of it, blah, 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 and he's like, and I know you won't, because I learned that when I was going through what Grant was going through, even like when I was just talking to your son, I was just asking him questions and questions and questions, not because I really wanted to know, but because I know that will get him talking, and so that's the same logic I applied with my kids. I'm like, you just ask them questions, because the big mistake I made that I think a lot of parents make is like, I would literally say to my kids, and it's so cringy now, but I would say like, I'm older, I know better, I'm smarter than you, I've been around longer, because we believe that, and it feels true. It is true in a lot of ways. Like, we know like how to keep them safe for sure, but I think we disregard the fact that they're their own people, they have their own brains, they think about things their own way, and of course we guide them. But it was like when Grant was starting to go through what he was going through, I was like telling him why he shouldn't smoke pot and why he shouldn't do this, and it's going to ruin his brain, it's going to ruin his life, and like all this very dramatic stuff. And when I stopped doing that and started asking more questions, like, why do you want to do this? Like, why is this important to you? How does this make you feel? Like, just question after question after question. And then now I say to my kids, like, do you want my thoughts? Do you want to hear what I have to say about that?
That's good.
Sometimes they say yes. A lot of times they say no.
Sure.
And even like my son, when he's like in a mood, because,
like in moods.
Teenagers are very moody. I'll be like, do you want some space right now? And he'll be like, yeah. I'm like, okay, no problem. I don't get mad. I used to.
Yeah.
But I don't get mad.
You don't take it personally.
I don't take it personally anymore. And I've learned, and I really do have to credit my second husband with this, because he really helped. I mean, he would be like in the background when I was talking to my kids, and he'd be like, like he'd be giving me the hand signals, like, don't say anything, don't do anything, don't react, and I'd be like, because I'm so reactive as a human, which is something I've really worked on. Of just like allowing my kids to just work it out themselves, come to me when they want me, not forcing myself on them, and I also think that there's some chemistry involved too. I mean, I know it sounds weird to say that with your kid, right? But it's like, I honestly like tried to play hard to get with my kids a little. Like, I'm like, I'm just gonna be cool back here. If you want to come talk to me, you can. Which is like a risk too, because you're like, they may never come talk to you. You're like, please talk to me. But I think there is it's like goes back to an energy thing. I'm like, if I ease up a little, kind of what you're saying about like trying so hard, if I ease up a little, they tend to come. Versus if I'm tell me. It never works. And I have to. This is like where like self-awareness, which I think is the holy grail of life, is like, if I'm like, ooh, you're talking a lot, you're asking a lot of questions. I mean, you're even asking, you're a little extra right now, like back off, Alli. You
Yeah.
know,
Like,
and
and you're hearing yourself do it.
I'm like, you're doing it, and
Yeah.
I would be like, stop talking. Like I'll be, especially in the car,
Right,
like that's the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So you're like, you know, like, do I just not talk? You know, but sometimes I'm like, just stop talking. Let him come to you. Let them come to you. Let them come to you. You know, and it really makes a difference. And I think that like letting kids feel that like, you know, my parents aren't so like whoosh, you know, on me is a big part of it.
Yeah, that's taking me back. Like,
It's really good.
I know, like my twin sister and I, we're just so different. And one thing
How different? You're identical twin
we're
sisters.
identical,
But yeah.
so we look exactly the same, but we are so different in our makeup and right, kind of.
Well, I feel like you've told me some things about your sister that
Yeah,
like that are not like you.
yeah.
for
And
sure.
she was telling me, she's like, I need like space. I need the pause to be so long that I will feel like it's a welcome, like you can speak. Whereas I was much more like chat. And
she needs more time to process too.
Yeah.
Like with conflict or.
Yeah, that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting. I don't want if you find this with your two boys, that one of them may need one thing and the other one needs the other.
Totally. I mean, isn't that crazy? Like, I'm sure you guys experience this. Like, it's all the same genetic makeup, and you're like, how are you such different humans?
So different.
They're so different.
Yeah.
And you learn. You know, it's like my older son. He's a little more like, we talk a lot. We have deep conversations a lot. He's such a seeker. You know, my younger son, he's much more creative. He's much more in his head and wants more space. Sometimes he just would like me to be in the room with him, but not talking to him. You know, which I'm like, okay, you just want me to be here, which is lovely and beautiful. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll just, you know, like sometimes he works on music a lot on his computer and he'll have his headphones, but he'll just come sit down next to me. Just wants to be next to me, you know, not in a conversation. So it's so different.
You think like they're really teaching you how to love selflessly. Because it's really serving. It's like, okay, this is not about me and how I feel and if I feel loved as a mom, but do they feel loved? Am I serving them to the way that they need to be loved?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that like one of the other big lessons as a parent, I think, was so many times when my kids were, and I think this goes for any age, when my kids were like not in a good mood, you know, moody, upset, angry, I always thought it was because of me.
Yeah, that's good.
One way or the other, I did something wrong. I said something wrong. I acted wrong, whatever. And whatever was happening for them was because of me, which is very fucking narcissistic.
Sure.
I mean, it's true. But it is also, I think that like there is some built-in narcissism as a parent, because you're like, for a very long time, everything revolves around our kids, you know? And so, I remember like Grant saying to me a couple of times, like, because he was in a bad mood, and I'd be like, what's wrong? You know? And he'd be like, it has nothing to do with you, Mom. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't do it, you know? And that was a big learning, to your point, for me, of like, not everything is about you, Alli. You know? And it took me so long, and now I'm so much better. If like my kids are in a bad mood, I'm like, if it's about me, if I've done something, we'll eventually get to that conversation. I don't need to have it this moment, which is a whole other thing too. Like for me, I'm like, what's the problem? I need to know right now so I can fix it. Tell me right now so I can fix it. And now I'm like, take a walk around the block. This is not your issue. This is not your problem to solve. Like, walk away, you know? And if it is, it'll eventually you'll have the conversation, you know? I mean, and I think that's something that I've learned over time and trial and error mistakes that I've made with my kids, is like, you gotta like, this is not the time, you know? I mean, I've even been in situations with one of my children where they, you know, took some drugs and they were in a really bad place. And like, I was like very disappointed in the decision that they made. And in that moment, I wanted to be like, you know, but I'm like, this is not the time. Like, we're going to let them sober up and we're going to have the conversation later, you know, where I think the old me would have been like, couldn't help myself. And you learn it's just it doesn't solve anything, which by the way has like, you know, served me in business as well. You know, it's like my go-to was always very reactive, and like there's a problem, I have to fix it right now, I have to deal with it right now, where I learned through, you know, CEOs that we brought on a Dry Bar, like I gotta pull back, you know. And those are lessons that I think you only learn again from being able to look at yourself objectively and have that self-awareness. And it's like, it's very true in parenting. It's very true in regular life. You know, there's just, That's why I go back to like, I think about self-mastery and self-awareness so much, you know, and I try to think about it so much because I want to constantly be reminding myself. I'm like, am I being a jerk right now? Am I taking up all the air in the room? Am I wanting too much attention? You know, all these things that I'm constantly trying to like balance myself out with.
Do you feel like you have people in your life that can give you like honest feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's largely my son, my older son, both of my kids, you know, will be like, you know, sometimes they'll say something to me and I'll be like, really? I don't think I'm acting like that. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm sure you are, you know? And so like, you know, and my best friend Paige, you know, it's like, and I appreciate that. Like I want those people in my life are going to be like, you know, my brother, you know, we're building this new company together and I mean, we had a thing recently where I, you know, kind of pushed back on the woman we hired as our president. And, you know, I was just saying what I thought. And he was like, don't scare her away. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to scare her away. I'm like, I have to be able to say what I think, you know? And he's like, I know. And I was texting about it and he kept trying to call me. I'm like, I don't want to talk on the phone about this, you know? And finally we got on the phone and I was like, I know, you know, it's like, I have to be aware of like how I come across to people and how, you know, making sure that I'm, you know, cause I did make that mistake at Dry Bar. Like I did make that mistake of like, you know, people were scared of me. I remember my brother, I think I talked about that on
I've heard that.
Their podcast,
Yep.
you know, it was like, I think I had this like, it doesn't matter, you know, like heads are going to roll like it, you know, whereas like now I'm like, that doesn't really get you very far, you know? And I learned that lesson. And so, but yet when my brother told me that most recently, I was like, I went right to defense. I was like, no, you know? And then I was like, well, you know,
I love that he called you though.
Yeah.
Because those things I cannot.
He kept calling me, and I was like, "Can we just text about this?" And he was like, "No,
for sure.
you know." And he was right.
I mean, talk about this
so
all
much
the time.
gets lost.
I mean, how many times? Our fights begin in a text.
Yeah.
You know, and then they live in, and the more we've been together, and I think the maturity, somebody will have the shift to go, "Hey,
we got to get off text.
Let's call.
Yeah.
Let's make a phone." Or one person just calls. And it's crazy how once you hear the voice,
it shifts,
you know, and then you're able to get back on the same page. It is, you were talking earlier about this too, that miscommunication, you know, like how do you just get back in alignment and realize we're on the same team. We have the same objective.
And you can take a text out of context and just seems a little more abrasive, a little like it's hard to understand sometimes. You can.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good for us. You know, I mean, it's, you know, and I remember I had a therapist say like, you know, only logistics should be discussed in text. You know,
that's good.
That's it.
Yeah.
And everything else, if there's any kind of emotion or feeling, no text.
Which actually is a good point because this is funny. We actually do all logistics on text message. And I think partly it's also, I never want to spend time when I'm in your presence, I feel like it's so
you don't want to talk
limited.
About like, the planning.
I don't want to talk about that. And I'm like, I love, sometimes I think we probably should, but then I'm like, no, we always do it on text message. And now I realize actually that's a good thing.
Because it's also like in black and white and you're like, wait, what time? And you can look back and be like, 4 o'clock, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas like, you want to reserve that like precious in-person time for like the good stuff. Yeah. So I mean, I thought that was good advice too. I was like,
advice,
no, you know, when feelings creep in, you know, because you just become a little different. You know, you're like, it's easier when you're hiding behind a phone to say stuff that you may not say to someone's face. You know, which by the way is back to the problem with dating apps. You know, and even like I've been like, I actually just started talking to this guy and I put on one of the dating apps you can do like a voice recording.
Okay.
And I realized, like I mentioned before, like sometimes voices can like be a deal breaker.
Yes,
you know?
I agree.
For both men and women, I think. And so I was like, you know, at first I was like too cool for school and barely put anything about myself. You know, let me just put a really cute picture and then call it a day. And I started to add more and more about myself. Like, I'm like, let me be a little more open and vulnerable on this silly thing. And then I recently added like a voice thing, because you can do a voice prompt. And I was like, you know, I'm doing this because it matters to me. So I'm guessing it matters to you, you know? And so this guy commented on my voice. And so I was like, well, that's not even text. Let's just do voice memos. So we've just been going back and we haven't met yet.
Interesting.
But we've been going back on voice memos, you know? I'm like, well, because if I like your voice, there's a better chance I'm going to like you. If I don't like your voice for whatever reason, it's chemistry. Then it's probably not going to work. So yeah, and I do actually voice text a lot these days. Like,
well, you know what I love about voice text now is that you can read it. Because sometimes I used to get annoyed back in the day.
Because you have to listen.
Who used to always, I was like, please don't voice text me because I can't listen, or I'm in a public place, or But now I'm like, well, now I can listen if I want to, or I can read it.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, Apple.
Yeah, I know. It is. I think voice texting is really great, especially if you're in like a situation where you're like, I just need to get something. For me, it's like I can't type all this. There's just nuance here that you can't get across. So let's voice text.
Yeah,
you know,
that's really cute.
I would love to hear what's one, or maybe not one, but best piece of relationship advice that you ever got.
God, I feel like I'm a bad person to ask. I've been married like 17 times. What's the best piece of relationship advice? I think, I don't know if it's advice that I don't know where I've picked this up, but I feel like, again, like what I'd like to, be more aware of and aim for next time, and I'm sure it is from all the work that I've done and picked it up wherever, is that, you don't lose yourself in a relationship. Don't make that other person, it's like, don't make that other person, you put them on that pedestal, which I've always, or don't let them put you on a pedestal, which I kind of want that. I kind of enjoy that, which I think most of us probably do on some level. But I think that's probably the best advice that I've heard is, to not put the other person on a pedestal, and not to let them put you on a pedestal either, to help so that you don't get all out of whack, which I think I've done in most of my relationships, which I'm going to not do next time.
It's on record.
It's exactly.
Future Mr. Alli Webb, you heard this. So when she's doing
I don't think whoever it is going to like being called Mr. Alli Webb.
But Mr. Webb, he could maybe take your maiden name and then his last name.
But that is an interesting, one thing. That's interesting that I love that even though you're talking about, hey, I don't want to make sure I don't lose myself, be put on a pedestal. I love all that. I think that's really wise and really insightful. But I also love that you're not looking to diminish yourself. Like you don't need to be small in order for you to be in a relationship that you long for. Like I love that about you. I love that you're a boss, BOSS boss. I love you're extremely driven and motivated, and because that's the version of yourself that doesn't need to be lost. Because that's the version in the right environment, the right context, with the right person is going to accentuate everything.
Totally.
There's so many things about me that I feel like have been added value or like accelerated because of my proximity to Beck.
Yeah.
Because of what I see in her. She magnifies.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's truth in if you're with the right person, they make you better.
Yeah.
It's like you want to be a better version of yourself with that person, which I don't think I've experienced, yet. And I think that is important.
Yeah.
And also there was something you were saying that I wanted to comment on. Now I lost it.
Shoot. Magnifying.
It'll come back.
Yeah.
No, you're a boss. Let's get back to your boss.
What was that? Oh my God. It was something when you were saying about being a boss. I don't know. I think probably it was something about, what was it?
Not being small.
You were saying to not be small. I lost it. Maybe it'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, even to encourage you a little bit, not that you asked for it, but do it anyway,
please. I'll take it all I can get.
I just think even we need good examples of incredible women who feel like they don't have to diminish their God-given talent and what they were created to do and called to do and what they love to do. I just think I've seen that with a lot of friends and in relationships where you feel like you have to, you can't outshine that person. You can't dream. And I just don't think that's a part of your makeup, but I also have to believe, and I do believe, that the next person that you're gonna build with and that you're gonna create with, and we're just believing it for you as your friends, and because knowing that you've done the hard work and that you haven't wasted a thing, that's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna fight to be the best version of me. I'm gonna fight to like learn everything I can about me, so that I get to receive the gifts that I think do have my name on them.
Yeah.
Because we believe that there's a future and a gift that has your name on it that is gonna be mind blowing, and that's gonna be exactly what you've been praying for and waiting for, and what you deserve.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to diminish.
Yeah.
You know, and even I love that the person who's gonna have to chase after you. So I love that you want to declare that they're gonna have to be able to run fast.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I mean, I like being chased.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably why I mentioned that scenario. Like when I'm walking out of a restaurant, like, what, you know, are you come track me
out. That's the thing, because I did go up to you, but you did chase me after that, which was
that's the part of the story that I remember.
Yeah.
Because then she didn't call you back.
Yep, didn't call me back.
Yeah,
she changed her number, so I had to get her number from somebody else.
Yeah, and that was not on purpose, but it's true. I forgot you didn't have my new number.
Nope. Then she dipped out. We fell in love, dated for 3 months, and then she flew across the country.
Yeah.
Did long distance for a year. So I've been chasing you my whole life, girl.
I love it.
You know, and we're gonna keep chasing, because I think there is something that keeps the fire burning.
And also just like for me, it's been like remembering to enjoy it and have fun. And I can skew very serious. You know, I go real melancholy and real serious real fast. And
have joy.
Just enjoy, like having fun and not putting, you know, which kind of goes back to like the great analogy of the race guy.
Sprinter.
Yeah, it's like, what a great analogy to like, just relax into it and enjoy the journey, which are all things that we know and we hear, but we forget.
Yes.
You know? Until, you know, hopefully you hear this and you're like, oh, right. Yes.
Because I'm sure, what would you have said to Alli, like yourself, when you were building Dry Bar? What would be the one thing you would have told her?
To enjoy it more. Yeah. You know, there was so much stress and so much anxiety. And I think about it a lot, you know, of how much time I wasted, you know, not enjoying things because I was so worried about so many things, you know, and, you know, I really try not to operate. And it's, you know, it's hard to say because I'm on the other side. I've sold a company and I've, you know, and it's a hard lesson to learn. And I don't know that we're meant to learn all these lessons before we're meant to learn them. You know, it's like, it's hard to say, like, I don't think I needed to worry as much as I did, but there is a certain like motivation and perseverance that you need to like get to that level. Yeah. And it, you know, it's not for the faint of heart. You know, it's not for everyone. And, you know, I think that like constant pushing, and I'm a pusher, you know, that was necessary. Yeah. You know, I mean, I think I don't know that I allowed myself to enjoy it as much as I wish I had, where I just, you know, on this side of my life, I do enjoy the moment more. I enjoy things more. I try to savor things more, you know, especially with my boys being older and I am feeling that tension right now of like, you know, they're 17 and 19. Grant happened to come home this year for football, and he, you know, he was in Ohio last year, and you know, I don't think he's going to be home for that much longer. You know, so I probably have like another 6-8 months, maybe, give or take, with him. And then he'll probably, at some point, he's going to get his own place. You know, you know, and both, you know, both my kids, and so I'm really trying to, you know, and we've gotten really close, and we go to dinner all the time. We spend so much time together, and it's great, you know. But it will. So enjoying the moment. And you hear people say that too all the time, like enjoy the moment, live in the moment, but it is really true, you know, and how quickly the moment's gone, you know. And it's the same thing like with feelings and everything else in life. It's like, it's just like what's happening right now isn't going to be happening. And who I was 5 minutes ago isn't who I am now. You know, it's another thing that I think about a lot. It's like, oh, I'm allowed to be a completely different person in 10 minutes than I am right now, you know. Which I think is like the grace we all need to give each other, you know, that like, you don't have to be the same person. Yeah. You know, my best friend Paige, who's very spiritual, and we talk about this all the time. And sometimes like when I meet somebody later in life that I knew as one person, she'll always say to me like because I'll be like, blah, 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 you know, and she's like, well, they may not be that person anymore. I'm like, it's true. That's great.
That's a good point.
Maybe, you know, just like I'm not
the person,
you know, the person I was, like, I think of it like pre-rehab with Grant, and the parent and person I am on the other side is very different.
Yeah.
Which I believe people can change, and, you know, we don't need to be held to the same standard our whole life. And
it's good. But I love what you're talking about with enjoying and, you know, like, yeah, we love that we get to enjoy our lives, and we love our kids. We love our, you
even
know,
in the
our
mess
marriage.
of it.
Even in the mess of it. Yes.
So it's funny because
absolutely.
yours is messy collective. Like, it is crazy. It is wild doing parenting 4 kids.
Yeah, family of 6.
Yeah.
Since we can't get a reservation anywhere in LA.
We don't
literally.
I don't even know if I want to go out for dinner because I'm like, the craziness of it's just too much. But we do, like, truly have joy in the mess of,
you know, and it is interesting now looking back on. I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and not in necessarily a regretful way, but like I remember that. Like I remember, even though I only had 2 kids, like I remember that. And then in my second marriage, you know, when he had 2 kids and I had 2 kids, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
And they were older, so some ways were easier, some ways were harder. They would fight a lot. I mean, you know, that's like,
sure.
You know, and I really didn't at the time like it and didn't let myself enjoy it, you know, and I, looking back on it, I miss it way more than I thought I would. You know, I always like, that was a big problem in our marriage. It was like his kids were younger, my kids were older. And I was like, I don't know if I want to like raise little kids again. And that was a big problem for our marriage. And looking back, it's so wild that I'm like, oh, I miss the craziness. I miss the chaos. Like I thought I wanted quiet and calm and clean and neat,
clean,
which I did, and I do. I'm like, I believe cleanliness is close to godliness. Like I am that person for sure. But I miss it, and I wish you know I wish I knew I was gonna miss that. I didn't realize it, you know, and so
I'm so glad you're sharing that.
Yeah,
because I think someone's gonna be listening.
Just sneeze, David.
To it right now.
I hear him holding on to it. There it is.
You know, they're going to be listening right now, and they're in the mess, either with family, with children, or in a business. And
it's like that, you know, the grass is greener on the other side. It's like, no, it's not. You just have to water your own grass.
Yes.
I love that so much because
it
is, you know, I've lived a lot of my life in this, like, oh, I wish I had that, or I wish I could do that, or, you know, and now having, you know, learned some really painful mistakes that like, you know, and the fact that I miss the kids, you know, my ex's kids is like, there was I would never have imagined, I would never have guessed that, you know, I mean, I see them here and there. I actually see them here. They come here sometimes, and I'm always so happy and like feel such joy when I see them. And I'm like, how did I miss that? You know, but I did, and it's a lesson. And you know,
I just love that you're so open.
Yep.
I just love that about you, because you never hoard even the hard things that you've learned through the hard. You're generous with a lot of things. You're generous with your resources, but you're generous as a person. You're generous with the things that you've learned, and like, thank you for coming on and sharing that.
I think it's like, I think it is, it may seem generous. It feels very self-serving that I'm like, if I can own it, then I can release it.
Yes.
And
that's true too.
You know, like, it's like, I can't stand when people don't own their shit.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stand it. Like, just own it, you know? And so I feel like I really want you to do that. So I got to make sure I'm always doing it. And I'm like, you know, I want to be the first person to say, you know, like, my marriage ended because of both of us, you know, like, I'd love to throw blame and, you know, and I could go down that road, and I have, but at the end of the day, you know, it's like, you are responsible, you know, too. And so I think when I can open up and say, you know, I messed up here, then it's like, it somehow unburdens me.
Yes.
Kind of like the whole idea of forgiveness, right? It's like, if you forgive somebody, it's like you're unburdening yourself.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with them. You know?
Own it and release it. That's great.
And it's interesting because I actually just watched like a reel recently, and it was like, when you hold on to bitterness, you actually age.
Yeah, I believe that.
And it's like, okay, that's crazy. We talk about beauty products, Botox, and all the other things, but bitterness can age you.
100%.
So let it go and forgive and carry joy.
And then, you know what I also have learned, and I think is so interesting, is like, which I couldn't wrap my head around for so long, but that like we are in control of what we do, what we say, what we feel, how we act, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I can be bitter, I can be angry about things that have happened, and I can find every reason to prove I'm right about that. But like, why? You know, where I could also just as easily be like, yeah, that was a bad situation, which is also like another thing that I work on a lot, is like not complaining, which historically I'm a pretty big complainer. You know, my trainers like told me that his mom used to say that she's not complaining, she's just reporting. And I was like, that's great.
So mean. Yeah.
So good, right? And so like, I mean, I more in like the gym when he's making me lift very heavy weights, and I'll be like, Kevin, it's too much. And he's like, I'm not complaining, I'm just reporting. You know? But complaining, I think, is a really interesting thing. And it's like, I now know, which I didn't also used to know, that I can just choose not to do that.
Yeah.
You know? And that, and I think that that's the thing with like humans, is like we think we're so out of control because our feelings are ruling the day.
Yes.
Where it's like, no, you can actually decide. But I did not understand that from all of my life.
Wow.
Only recently that I'm like, oh right, I can decide not to complain. I cannot talk shit about that person. I cannot say anything bad, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, do you think this has any link to faith? To your faith journey?
Probably. I don't know that I ever really thought about it, but yeah. I mean, I talk to God a lot these days. So, you know, and I remember my first husband's, you know, I mentioned was Mormon, which is a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm Joseph Smith, so I started the whole thing. So
Right.
I get it.
Oh my God, I never thought about that. And, you know, my first husband was very, you know, left the church as soon as he could, because it's a pretty like stringent, very rigid, like a lot of rules. And when he was like, I'm out. And so by the time I met him and we got married and I met his parents, you know, and to your question, I think it's full circle. Like, I've always been really fascinated by religion.
Yeah.
Mostly to have thought it was negative, because like, you know, controlled, organized religion historically, if you look at the data, it's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
But when I met his parents, I was like, wait. And I remember calling my mom and being like, what's Mormon? Like I grew up in South Florida. I was like, I have no idea what happens in Utah. I didn't know anything about it. And so the first time I went to his parents, and I was like, you know, tell me everything. Yeah. You know, and I remember, and his mom would be like, well, she would tell me like they were making a hard decision, they'd pray about it. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, I'm like, and then what? You know, and then she's like, well, then we get like a feeling. I'm like, is that God? And she's like, you know how, and this was what really crystallized it for me. And this was so many years ago.
Sure.
She was like, you know how you get like a gut feeling of like what you should or shouldn't do? She's like, we believe that's God. And I was like, oh, you know, and the more like I thought about it for years. I mean, that was probably 20 years ago she said that to me, you know, and it just really stuck. And I was like, oh, that must be, you know, that's like a deep belief. And so maybe that has like come full circle for me in faith. And I don't know that I ever really connected it, but maybe. I mean, I know you think it's true.
I think so.
But I mean, I think even like finding Mosaic, you know, and like just even when I was telling Erwin at a dinner recently, I was like, I don't ever refer to, I mean, Mosaic is a church, I guess, but like I don't refer to it and think of it as a church.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, when I tell people I go to Mosaic and they're like, what's that? I'm like, well, it's this white building. There's no pictures of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no crosses. Like you wouldn't know it's a church if you didn't know it was a church, which I love. And I, you know, I actually was telling Erwin I've told you this, that I was like, I'll ask Beck, like, who's talking today? And you'll say Pastor Erwin or Pastor Joe. And I'm like, so Erwin or Joe, you know? And he's like, yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about calling him pastor and whatever. And I'm like, I think of it as like Joe's giving a talk or Erwin's giving a talk. Like I would listen anywhere else, you know? So it's interesting. It's been an interesting, like, but then there's always like, you know, God is sprinkled in there. And I've really like, you know, I've come to really believe. I mean, I have a lot of faith, I think, now, and trust. And there is that, like, you've hit the bottom and you're like, there's got to be something bigger than me. And so you start to believe.
Yeah. And then I even love it. You start to see the fingerprints on all these things you didn't realize before, and,
totally.
And like, even you're talking about joy. Like, that's one of my favorite things. We're talking about faith and spirituality is like, it's not just in the rock bottom moments, although that's real. It's also in the joyful moments, that, like, I would tell people this all the time where they would go like, yeah, do you think God really cares about my happiness or my like joy? Like, why does that really matter? And I say, yes. The reason I know this is true is because of taste buds. And I was like, what do you mean taste buds? I say it because without taste buds, it would just be about caloric intake.
Right.
Right? If God didn't care about us enjoying life,
that's so good.
We wouldn't have taste buds, but we don't. We have, and even discovering more of that, we have taste buds in our throat, because not enough to taste it on our tongue. You have to taste it on the way down into our stomach, and and you can identify, like, not just a okay cup of coffee, but like a world class cup of coffee when it hits that part of your taste buds.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about life, right? About every season, and not wasting the pain, not wasting the hardship. How can I find joy on the other side of this? Otherwise, what's the point? I think, and that's full circle. Maybe as we close, that's the beauty. And I think what people can learn so much from you, it's not just in your resilience and your like determination and your hard work and your bossness. All those things are true, but it's you actually fighting and finding joy.
Yeah.
It's that's one of your, one of the things on your business card isn't just entrepreneur, isn't just business owner, isn't just creative, isn't just, world class. It's actually a finder of joy. And that's a rare quality. And that's what one of the things I love most about you, and that it goes ahead of you, and it goes next to you, and it goes behind you. And I think all of us can learn to have a little bit more of that mindset, and really see what future we could create on the other side of those really difficult moments.
Thank you.
But yeah,
really
we
kind.
are honored that you came.
We're going to have to break this into 2 episodes.
It is.
Jeez.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like approaching midnight here.
I know. The sun's going down.
Well, I guess it goes down earlier now, right? Because I noticed that. I'm like, oh, it's only 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's dark. Yeah.
And I know, technically it's 5 o'clock. It's even earlier.
Is it 5 right now?
Yeah, because of daylight savings.
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's sneaking up on us.
It's sneaking
It's
up.
good for kids, though, right? To get them to bed a little earlier. Do you?
We haven't figured it out yet, but they just keep staying up as if it was the other time.
It's true.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, even you guys, when you talk about your kids, I'm like, I mean, I wished that time away. Like, I was like, oh, this is so hard. Can't go to restaurants, can't do that. But now, it's like hearing you guys talking about, like, oh, I kind of miss the chaos, So it's a good lesson.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us.
Yeah.
To enjoy it.
You can bring Rocky over to my house.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
You can. She can.
Keep her. And then we might drop one other one off as well.
No, that's what I'm
I
saying.
don't know what happened.
It's a 2-kid deal.
She can do a sleepover. That would be fun.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is
absolutely
lovely.
love you,
really
and know it'll be a value for
love you.
so many people. And we can't wait to see what's coming next, and
Beck will be the first to know.
Right?
Yeah.
We're believing it and hopeful for even earlier. Our producer extraordinaire, David Yanez, I loved it when he prayed before. It was just like asking that what you do next would have even more impact and more success than Dry Bar and everything that you've stepped into. And then we want to double that and go also hoping and believing your next relationship has just as much more impact and success and beauty, because we believe you're just getting started, and the best is yet to come.
That means a lot to me. It's something. There's something about somebody else holding that for you that helps.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm praying over it. I love it.
Well, you sign us off?
Yeah, thank you for watching Unguided. I hope you love this as much as we have loved this. Like, this will go down in the books as one of the best. So thank you for listening. Share it to anyone and whoever you think would love this and appreciate these insights. And we cannot wait to see you for the next episode. Love you guys.
Bye.